Welcome to another Sad Boys book review. My name is Dusty, and today I am covering The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. This book released in, I think, 1977, and is the first book in a massive fantasy series called Shannara. Bit of backstory. I tried reading this book when I was younger. I remember my mom came home. She had a giant box. Like, her friend was like, I have these books. I'm not going to read them anymore. Your kids like fantasy. They like Lord of the Rings. Here you go. She gave, whoever it was, he or she, they gave my mom this big box, and it was full of, like, all of the paperbacks of Shannara. There were, like, 20 books or so. I don't know. It was a huge amount. And I tried reading it, and I got, I don't know, maybe midway through chapter 1, and I'm like, this book sucks, and I just put it away. And I think my mom ended up giving those books away, so I didn't have them anymore. But, I don't know, for some reason, it just kind of, there was a good while there in, like, early 2024 where I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, I kind of want to try it again. And every time I would go to Half Price Books, I'd see if they had a hardcover of it. They had plenty of paperbacks, and they were just really ratty. Some of them were first editions, or at least close to it, maybe like published in the 80s, and they looked it. They felt it. They were just musty old, just browned, bent, torn, whatever. But I wanted to try and find a hardcover. I never could, so I eventually I bought it on Kindle, and I jumped into it. I think I started it in May. I didn't finish it until November, but I started it in May, and I got past the first chapter, obviously, since here I am reviewing it. It was a weird book for me. I don't really know. Even now, a month and a half removed from finishing it, it's hard to say how I feel about it. It's very strange. I liked it, I think. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's very weird. So the general premise is, believe it or not, very, very similar to something that you've probably read. There's an evil demon lord person, evil bad guy, and he is trying to come back into power, and he is hunting down this kid, this young man named Shay, who has a secret lineage that connects him to the fabled elven weapon, the Sword of Shannara. And him and his foster brother, Flick, are come upon by this weird, mystical, magical druid named Alanon, and he sends them on their quest to hunt down the Sword of Shannara. We meet more characters along the way. Menion is the prince of, I don't know if it was Lee or Leah, it's Leah, a kingdom that is not far away from Shay and Flick's hometown. He's been friends with Shay for a long time. Flick doesn't trust him. He joins them on their quest. They meet the prince of one of the major nations of the south. They meet a dwarf. They meet elves. They have if you'll allow me the term, a fellowship that they build with Alanon to hunt down the Sword of Shannara. But yeah, there's Balinor, the prince, as I mentioned, Hendel, the dwarf, and then there's the two elven brothers, Durin and Dael. That's like the fellowship, so to say. And if you've picked up already, this book got a lot of flack about its similarities to the Lord of the Rings. And yeah, it definitely does start out feeling like Terry Brooks definitely was heavily influenced by Tolkien, which, to be fair, almost every modern fantasy writer has influence to Tolkien, whether they know it or not. He's the godfather of modern fantasy for a reason. But yeah, it does feel very overt in some ways, but credit where it's due to Terry Brooks, it does try to separate itself from Tolkien relatively quickly. But yeah, it's hard not to see this band of people and not think of the Fellowship of the Ring. See Shay and think of some mix between, Frodo Baggins and maybe Luke Skywalker. It's hard to say. I don't know. I think both came out in 1970. Obviously, Star Wars came out in 77. I think this also came out in 77. Yeah. So I don't know what came first, but obviously Terry Brooks did not write this book in 1977 after seeing Star Wars. But I do feel a lot of similarities between Luke and Shay. But Luke is also very much the archetypical farmer boy going on, that trope. Farm boy goes on adventure bigger than himself. But it's just a very strange book because it does distance itself from its very obvious inspiration as quickly as it can. But I almost feel like this is a tale of two novels. It was a pretty long book. My Kindle version, I think, came out to, it was 726 pages. So, a hefty novel in and of itself. I almost feel like I read two different books. I got to about the halfway point, and I'm just like, this feels like the end of the book. This is the climax, isn't it? But then it kept going, and the whole time I'm like, I feel like I've started the second book in this series, and I still haven't had the first book resolved yet. And by the time the book does resolve, it feels like everything has wrapped up, but I still feel like I read two books at the same time. Like, the tonal shift, the way that everything happens, it's very strange. Like I said, it feels like two separate books that he just pushed together as one. And it led to some really weird pacing issues for me in the second half, because the first half was just lightning fast, just boom, 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 plot, plot, plot. And like I said, I get halfway through and I'm like, we're almost done, aren't we? But no, we're only halfway. So that led to some really weird things where the second half of the book had some really strange pacing problems to where it kind of got a slog at points, to where I was just like, man, can this hurry up? Can we get to the next bit? And I found myself a lot of the time just wishing to be done with the book. It's like, can we just get to the end here? Can we just have the plot happen? Can we have our climax? Can we have our final battle or whatever? Can we have Shay do whatever it is he's going to do? How is this book going to end? How are we going to get there? And credit where it's due, it didn't go where I thought it was going to. It was very unpredictable in both good and bad ways. It was predictable in mostly good ways. And I did enjoy the characters mostly. I mean, the elf brothers were characters technically, but I feel like they could have been fleshed out a little more. Shay was a bit of a wooden board, if I'm being honest, for most of the book. He wasn't really a character. He was just a person that was just set upon this quest and then was just kind of like, oh no, I must react to what's happening. I liked Flick well enough, I guess. Menion was probably my favorite character. His plot line was very good. I liked where he went. I liked how his story progressed. His character beats. I thought he had the most growth out of anybody in the book. Shay still just kind of was one note throughout the entire thing, and that's fine, I guess. He's just supposed to be he's the character. He's the audience insert character. He's the one that's like, him and Flick both, but mostly Shay. I don't know anything. Al-Anon, please explain the world to me. Like that, he was the character, the ignorant character that exists for the audience to learn about the world in a as much of an organic way as you can. And that's really the only purpose he served outside of the kind of Deus Ex Machina, Sword of Shannara, conduit, chosen destiny man that he's supposed to be. But there were some characters that were introduced in the second half. Penniman Creel and Kelset. They were really good characters. I loved both of them. They were both fantastic. I really enjoyed their storylines and where they went. But like I said, it just kind of had really odd pacing in the second half. The ending felt extremely forced, the climax at least. If anyone's ever read the Inheritance Cycle, the Aragon books, and if they have issues with how that wrapped up, that final battle in Inheritance, Book 4, you might know where I'm coming from when I say this wrapped up a little too neat at times in the climax. Which, for the record, I do like the end of Inheritance. I do like how that wrapped up personally. I know a lot of people have problems with it. I like it personally, but I couldn't help but think of how that ended up when reading the climax to Sword of Shannara and feeling like Inheritance did it better. I felt satisfied with how that happened. I know a lot of people didn't, but I did. And how Shannara ended, I was just like, that's it? It did also kind of give me a little bit of Eye of the World vibes. How Eye of the World, the final quarter of that book was just breakneck pace, and suddenly it's over, and you're like, okay, whatever, let's move on to the next book, which I still need to start, The Great Hunt. I'll hopefully get to it here in 2025, but we'll see. Yeah, it's just really, really strange book. I just don't know how I truly feel about Sword of Shannara. I liked it, but I also have a lot of problems with it. Am I going to read the other 2 books in the initial Shannara trilogy? Probably, but I'm in no hurry to do it. I'm really not. I'll do it when the mood strikes me, but I mean, as it stands, I don't know. I really don't know. This book left me scratching my head, because I know I liked it, but I also didn't for a lot of reasons. So, I don't know, with that, I'm giving the Sword of Shannara a 7 out of 10. I don't know, maybe check it out. Your mileage may vary. It's a very popular series. It's a very divisive series because of its very, very obvious influence by Tolkien, especially given that it came out within like 20-25 years of Lord of the Rings, so it was still pretty fresh. Tolkien, I think, was still alive, maybe. I don't remember exactly. I think he died in the 80s. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I'm sure Christopher Tolkien does not like Shannara. But give it a try if you're into it. It's a bit of a heavy read. Like there's only like 35 chapters in a 700-page book, so you're going to be reading pretty heavy chapters, like they're 20-25 pages a piece. So like once you start it, you're in it until that chapter ends. But I don't know, it's just such a strange book, and I still can't really pin down how I truly feel about it. And yeah, as much as that might not be definitive, that's where we're going to end this. So thank you everybody for listening, and I'll catch you in the next book. Take care.